Your life is a message to the world. Believe me or not, make it inspiring. A very good morning to each one of you. Today again, me, Shruti Aneja, am here to carry on with the second part of the second chapter from the book The World Politics. The name of the chapter is The End of Bipolarity. Students, if you remember, in the last video we did discuss the meaning of the bipolar world, and we also discussed that how USSR, that is the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, started gaining importance and started growing its economy day after another. We also watched through the slides and the explanation that how USSR was trying to compete with America, but it could not do so. Why? Because of the bad quality production, and also because the citizens wanted democracy and freedom of expression. So today we'll be beginning with Michael Gorbachev, and we'll be talking about him, how he brought reforms in the USSR in order to make it strong, but ultimately they were of no use. So before we begin with the slide work, I would just like to tell you that which slides we shared yesterday in the previous video. We started with the overview, the falling of the Berlin Wall, and then we started with what was Soviet system, right? Now I'm coming to the slide wherein we need to talk about Gorbachev and its disintegration. Michael Gorbachev, as the name suggests, he was the former politician of Russia. He was a Russian himself and a former politician of Soviet Union. When I talk about him, then I don't forget to remember that he was quite very, you can say, focused and target-oriented person. He ruled Soviet Union from 1985 until 1991, and he was the General Secretary of the Communist Party of Soviet Union. Let us see some of the facts that he brought into USSR. When I talk about him, I also remember that he made every possible attempt to revolutionize the Union and also to make possible every use of technology that he could. So let us move on to the slide work. Michael Gorbachev, the General Secretary of the Communist Party of Soviet Union in 1985, sought to reform the problematic situation of Soviet Union. Students, if you remember, I did talk in my previous video that USSR was now getting engulfed with problems. Why? Because the citizens were not that happy. They wanted democracy, they had no say in the government, and they wanted reforms. They wanted their say in the government. They wanted a participation in the government. Though the economy was growing and though the minimum standard of living was guaranteed in every family, but when it comes to competition with America, then there was no match. And from there only, if you remember, we discussed that how there was an end to bipolarity. That means USSR and USA did not stand on the same platform now. However, Gorbachev's decision to normalize the relations with the West and democratize and reform the government had some other effects that neither he nor anyone else intended or anticipated. Anticipation. That means he never expected that when he would produce reforms, when he will bring reforms in USSR, then this could happen. You know, when he saw the situation, he thought that, you know, bringing reforms and bringing some changes will be helpful, but ultimately he was wrong. So हम यहाँ पर क्या पढ़ रहे हैं? We are talking about how USSR disintegrated and how Michael Gorbachev, who was the General Secretary of the Communist Party of Soviet Union, sought to bring out certain changes in the USSR, but ultimately they were of no use. Michael Gorbachev कौन था? He was the General Secretary of the Communist Party of Soviet Union. I hope it's clear. Okay, so now what was he doing there? He was trying to bring some changes in USSR so that the people could be happy, so that the people feel satisfied with the reforms brought. But we never expected, or he never expected, the people never expected that such changes could be of no use. Okay, moving on to the slide work again. Unlike in the past, the Soviet Union under Gorbachev did not intervene when the disturbances occurred and the communist regimes collapsed after one another. So, unlike Gorbachev, no other person in the entire, you can say, Soviet Union had expected that the reforms which were being brought by Michael Gorbachev will be of no use. I'm moving on to the next slide. Gorbachev initiated the policies of economic and political reform and democratization within the country. If you remember in the previous video, we did share that though Soviet Union had started challenging the goods produced with America, but they were of like no competition, they were matchless. Okay, why? Because the quantity was going on good, but the quality production did not exist. It did not match with the fine quality of the goods that were produced in America, in the West. Okay, and moreover, one of the drawbacks, if you remember, were that the people wanted democracy and freedom of expression. They wanted that there has to be some public opinion also, so that the people could tell the government that whether they are okay with the reforms brought or not. So what did Gorbachev do? He democratized the country. He democratized Soviet Union and tried to bring on certain changes which could be helpful for people, and the people could become happy. Okay. The reforms were opposed by the leaders within the Communist Party. Now, as I told you, whenever there will be a change, then the change will not be very easy. Right? Whenever like you need to bring a reform, then the reforms are the revolutions and the reforms are very difficult. Why? Because सब लोग उसको अच्छा नहीं मानते. कोई उसको कहता है कि ये अच्छे के लिए है, कोई कहता है बुरे के लिए है. That means there will be criticization. Okay, people will not like digest every fact. They will not be very happy with the changes brought. ओके तो बहुत सारा क्रिटिसिज्म उसको मिलेगा. तो उसी तरह से जब गॉर्बाचेव ने ये ट्राई किया कि वो कंट्री को डेमोक्रेटाइज कर दे, डेमोक्रेसी ले आए, तो उसको बहुत क्रिटिसाइज किया गया. कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी के ही लोग उसको क्रिटिसाइज करने लग पड़े कि जो भी ये चेंजेस लेकर आ रहा है, दे आर नॉट ऑफ एनी यूज, they will not make people happy. Okay, so what happened? The people had tasted freedom by then and did not want the old style rule of the communist party. अब कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी के लोग तो अपोज कर रहे थे कि जो माइकल गॉर्बाचेव चेंजेस लेकर आ रहा है, रिफॉर्म्स ला रहा है, डेमोक्रेटाइजेशन ला रहा है, दे आर ऑफ नो गुड. व्हाई? बिकॉज दे वांटेड दैट ओल्ड स्टाइल. लेकिन लोग क्या चाहते थे? लोग चाहते थे कि हमें डेमोक्रेसी मिले, लोग चाहते थे हमें फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन मिले. सो नाउ देयर वाज अ टग ऑफ वॉर. आपको समझ में आ रहा है? देयर वर टू साइड्स नाउ. Leaders of Communist Party wanted that Gorbachev should not bring any changes, but people wanted that the country should become democratic. ठीक है, तो दो तरह के ओपिनियंस फ्रेम हो गए. कौन से? एक कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी के अंदर ही लीडर्स जो नहीं चाहते थे कि कोई रिफॉर्म आए, जो नहीं चाहते थे कि डेमोक्रेटाइजेशन आए. और लोग क्या चाहते थे? लोग चाहते थे हमें फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन मिले, हमारी कंट्री डेमोक्रेटाइज हो जाए, हमें डेमोक्रेसी मिले, ताकि हमारा पब्लिक ओपिनियन बने. सो देयर वाज अ टग ऑफ वॉर बिटवीन द पीपल एंड द लीडर्स ऑफ द कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी. Able to understand? Then the Russian Republic, where Yeltsin won a popular election, began to shake off centralized control. Power began to shift from Soviet center to the Republic, especially in the more Europeanized part of the Soviet Union. The Central Asian republics did not ask for independence and wanted to remain with the Soviet Federation. So now, since there was a tug of war, so some people wanted freedom, others who were mainly attached with the Communist Party wanted no freedom. They wanted that old pattern of the government to go on so that there are no changes. Okay, in December 1991, under the leadership of Yeltsin, Russia, Ukraine and Belarus, three major republics of USSR, declared that Soviet Union was disbanded. तो जब कभी भी इंटरनल वॉर शुरू हो जाता है, यानी कि आपस में ही लोगों में एक एक राइवलरी शुरू हो जाती है, डिफरेंस ऑफ ओपिनियन शुरू हो जाता है. सो वी कैन वेरी वेल गेस दैट द कंट्री गोज इनटू डिसइंटीग्रेशन. तो वही हाल हुआ यूएसएसआर का, that the people were on one side and the leaders of the Communist Party and the people who were attached with the Communist Party were on the other side. So there was now a tug of war between them, which led to the disintegration of Soviet Union. Alright, the Communist Party of Soviet Union was banned and capitalism and democracy did not exist. The declaration of the disintegration of USSR and the formation of the Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS, came as a surprise to other republics, especially to the Central Asian ones. So automatically that Communist Party which was existing in USSR, जिसका Gorbachev कौन था, General Secretary था. Michael Gorbachev was the General Secretary of the Communist Party. So that Communist Party was ultimately banned and it was not able to exercise any control on the people. Why did Soviet Union disintegrated? Children, when we study this chapter, then there are many long answers to remember. First of all, we began with what is a bipolar world. Then we began with what is Soviet Union. If you remember in the previous video, we did discuss that what is USSR. What is USSR? Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. Okay. And how did it form itself after the end of the Cold War? आपको याद है Cold War क्या है? In the first chapter we studied that what was Cold War. After the Second World War, the Cold War started. Okay, and with the end of the Cold War, there was a declaration that now the world will be no longer bipolar. अभी तक लोग ये समझते थे कि यूएसएसआर और यूएसए दोनों पावरफुल हैं, बट हमने कल देखा, प्रीवियस वीडियो में देखा that how did USSR established and how did it disintegrate. Okay, though it was able to provide minimum standard of living to the people, it was having a quantity production, but the quality was not able to match with the countries of the West. Alright, so let us study point wise. It's a very important question from the point of view of boards. How did the second most powerful country in the world suddenly disintegrate? ओके और क्योंकि ये डिसइंटीग्रेट हो गई, इसीलिए हमारा वर्ल्ड क्या कहलाया जाता है? इट इज अ यूनिपोलर वर्ल्ड. नाउ it is a unipolar world. Why? Because America is considered to be the most powerful country in the world. ओके पहले हमने देखा कोल्ड वॉर के रहते कि हमारा वर्ल्ड बाइपोलर कहलाया जाता था, बिकॉज it was USA and USSR, which two countries were equally considered to be important. Then we saw that how did Soviet Union disintegrate? तो क्योंकि वो disintegrate हो गया, and that is why हमारा world क्या कहलाना शुरू कर दिया उसको लोगों ने? यूनिपोलर. यूनिपोलर मतलब एक ही कंट्री एग्जिस्ट करती थी जो कि पावरफुल थी और मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थी साइंस टेक्नोलॉजी वाइज, एजुकेशन और फाइनेंस वाइज एंड कल्चरली ऑल्सो. Okay, so while there are unique features of Soviet collapse, there may be more general lessons to be drawn in this very important case. How did it disintegrate? We'll study. There is no doubt that the internal weakness of Soviet political and economic institutions which failed to meet the aspirations of the people were responsible for the collapse of the system. अगर आपको याद हो, मैं बार बार एक ही point repeat कर रही हूँ, that the most important point for the collapse of the Soviet Union was the dissatisfaction of the people in the government. जब तक लोग अपना ट्रस्ट और फेथ अपनी गवर्नमेंट, अपने लीडर्स, अपने रूलर्स में नहीं रखेंगे, तब तक वो सेटिस्फाइड नहीं रहेंगे. जो भी पॉलिसीज और जो भी रिफॉर्म्स उनके लिए बनाए जा रहे हैं, दे नीड टू हैव दैट फेथ इन द गवर्नमेंट. I'm not talking about this right now. I will just give you one example of Hitler and Mussolini. Hitler and Mussolini were considered to be great dictators. उनको बहुत अच्छा orators कहा जाता है. Orators इसलिए क्योंकि वो जो कुछ भी कहते थे लोगों को लगता था कि उनकी भलाई के लिए कह रहे हैं. Why? Because the people had lot of trust in them. तो लोगों को rulers में trust होना बहुत important है. तो the first and the most important reason for the disintegration of USSR was that the people lacked trust and faith in the rulers. Economic stagnation for many years led to severe consumer shortages, and a large section of Soviet society began to doubt and question the system and to do so openly. I told you one thing, yes, in the previous video when I ended, that now USSR's economy became stagnant. आगे बढ़ ही नहीं पा रही थी। तो जब इकोनॉमी स्टैग्नेंट हो जाती है, आगे नहीं बढ़ पाती है, तो प्रोडक्शन स्टैग्नेंट हो जाता है, लोगों को शॉर्टेजेस होने लग पड़ती हैं। किसकी? रिसोर्सेस की, फूड रिसोर्सेस की, ऑयल की, ट्रांसपोर्ट की, ओके, मशीनरी की, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा, एंड दे स्टार्टेड लूजिंग देयर फेथ। जब उनको बेसिक नेसेसिटीज अवेलेबल ही नहीं होंगी तो फिर काहे की गवर्नमेंट? तो दैट इज व्हाई द पीपल thought that the government cannot work, and that is why the people started losing their trust and faith in the government, and the economy became stagnant. Why did the system become so weak, and why did the economy became stagnant? The Soviet economy used much of its resources in maintaining a nuclear and military development of its satellite states and Eastern Europe and within the Soviet Union. अब बहुत ज्यादा पैसा उन्होंने कहाँ खर्च किया? मिलिट्री को स्ट्रॉन्ग करने में, और किसको स्ट्रॉन्ग करने में? न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी को स्ट्रॉन्ग करने में। एंड दैट इज वाई जब आपका मेन जो फाइनेंस है वो कहाँ लग जाएगा? मिलिट्री और न्यूक्लियर लाइक एनर्जीज को स्ट्रॉन्ग करने में लग जाएगा, तो जो बेसिक नेसेसिटीज हैं दे विल कम इन शॉर्टेज फॉर द पीपल. Okay, this led to a huge economic burden that the system could not cope up with. तो जो इकोनॉमी का बर्डन है वो यूएसएसआर पर आता गया, बिकॉज लोगों को बेसिक नेसेसिटीज तो मिल ही नहीं पा रही थी. बिकॉज जो इकोनॉमी का पैसा है, जो टैक्सेशन लोग भरते हैं, उसका पैसा है वो कहाँ जा रहा है? इट इज गोइंग टू स्ट्रेंथन द न्यूक्लियर एंड द मिलिट्री स्ट्रेंथ ऑफ द कंट्री. और वो ऐसा क्यों कर रही थी? कैन यू टेल मी? My question here to you is that why was USSR trying to strengthen its military and its nuclear energy? I repeat, my question for today is why was USSR trying to strengthen its military and nuclear energy? I hope that you have heard my question very nicely, and I would love to read your feedback when you watch my video. It will also be a proof that you have watched my video and you have understood till here. I repeat my question, why was USSR trying to strengthen its military and nuclear energy? Okay, so when you understand it, do drop your comments in the comment box after reading the chapter and after watching my video. So I continue here that it was able to cope up with the military and the nuclear energy, but it was not able to cope up with the basic necessities for the people. At the same time, ordinary citizens became more knowledgeable about the economic advances of the West. हम हमेशा से ये human mind is such that वो हमेशा से ये सोचता है कि हमसे better कौन है, whenever we talk about our Facebooking accounts and WhatsApp, तो हम हमेशा देखते हैं कि हमसे बेटर फोटो किसने लगाई, हमसे बेटर पोस्ट किसने किया. So it's human mind. So automatically the people of USSR could now understand that the West was advancing. America was much better than them. The people were much happier than them. Okay, so they were able to understand the situation, and that is why they wanted that development in their country. Moving on to the next slide. They could see the disparities between their system and the system of the West. So now they could make a comparison. Comparison is a human tendency. हम कंपेयर करते ही हैं अपने नेबर के साथ, अपने फ्रेंड्स के साथ, अपने राइवल्स के साथ. ओके, कंपटीशन इज अ ह्यूमन टेंडेंसी, और कंपटीशन हेल्दी और अनहेल्दी भी होती है. हमें बेटर भी बनाती है और हमें डिसइंटीग्रेट भी करती है, हमें डिमोरलाइज भी करती है. अगर हम कंपटीशन हेल्दियर रखते हैं तो हम अच्छे बनते जाते हैं. सो ऑटोमेटिकली द पीपल ऑफ सोवियत यूनियन स्टार्टेड कंपेयरिंग देयर कंडीशन विद द कंडीशन ऑफ द वेस्ट. The Soviet Union had become stagnant in an administrative and political sense as well. I hope you can understand now this. The Communist Party that had ruled the Soviet Union for 70 years was not accountable to the people. वो answerable ही नहीं थी. लोग जो पूछना चाह रहे थे, लोगों गवर्नमेंट और रूलर्स के पास उसका आंसर नहीं था. वो क्या बोलते? And that is why they were not answerable. Ordinary people were alienated by slow and stifling administration, rampant corruption. तो ये सब चीजें होने लग पड़ी. People were dissatisfied, corruption was increasing, okay, and to correct mistakes it had made. The unwillingness to allow more openness in the government and the centralization of the authority in the West land. more privileges than ordinary citizens. People did not identify with the system. अपने आप को वो identify नहीं कर पा रहे थे system से. आज हम इंडिया में कह सकते हैं कि जो reforms हैं वो मेरे लिए बनाए गए हैं, वो हमारे लिए masses के लिए बनाए गए हैं. If I want, I can talk to the leaders. If I want, I can report, I can register my complaint to the judiciary. But वहाँ पर ऐसा कुछ नहीं हो रहा था. Gorbachev's reforms promised to deal with these problems. Gorbachev promised to reform the economy, catch up with the West and loosen the administrative system. Administrative system लोगों के लिए बहुत ही tight था. They could not express themselves. So Gorbachev ने promise तो किया कि वो compete करेगा अमेरिका से और वो लोगों को chance देगा कि वो public opinion बनाए, but ऐसा कुछ हुआ नहीं. Gorbachev's accurate diagnosis of the problem and his attempt to implement reform was not a very good success. Gorbachev should have moved much faster and were disappointed with the impatience of his methods. So उसके जो methods थे वो बहुत ही practical नहीं थे और लोग अपना trust और अपना faith उस पर खोते जा रहे थे. They did not benefit in the way they had hoped or they benefited too slowly. So consequences of disintegration we'll talk in the other video. I hope you have understood what I discussed today. We discussed about Michael Gorbachev. Who was Michael Gorbachev? Michael Gorbachev was the General Secretary of the Communist Party of Soviet Union, and his reign started from somewhere in 1985 until 1991. Alright, and my question for today's video was that why did Soviet Union, that is why did USSR tried to cope up with more of its military and nuclear energy unless and until the people were not satisfied. That is, why did not adhere to the necessities of the people और उसने अपना सारा पैसा, अपनी सारा इकोनॉमी, सारा फाइनेंस न्यूक्लियर और मिलिट्री एनर्जी को स्ट्रेंथन करने में क्यों लगा दिया? Read the chapter, watch my video and drop your comments in the comment box. I will be very happy to read them all. Thank you so much. Stay tuned.